Now, is there like an influx in pearls recently that you've noticed, or do you feel that pearls are still kind of hidden gems, if you will?
You know, I yes, and oh boy, that's kind of a tough question. So, okay, let's break it apart a little bit. So, I could do this for like 10 hours. So I'm trying to pull back is what I'm trying to in my mind right now. I'm like, how do I not make this like forever? Because I love talking about this stuff. So they've been around for forever. Pearls are one of the oldest gems known to mankind, and the oldest pearl that we've been able to find is about 8,000 years old. And they existed before that, as long as there's been mollusks, oysters, mussels in the oceans and streams. There's been pearls, and they've been worn as jewelry forever and ever and ever. And if you look at a lot of like ancient art, I was just in Paris the last few weeks, for example, looking at like really old artwork and people wearing pearls and noticing that they weren't wearing any other gems. I mean, diamonds are actually really new to the game. Rubies are pretty old, about as old as pearls, in terms of what we know about people wearing them. So up to today, pearl, they're not a new thing, but what happened in the 1900s, right around the turn of the last century, is the market moved from what's called natural pearls, and those are the guys diving down in the ocean and picking up the oyster and getting lucky and finding a pearl, to cultured pearls, which is people figured out how to take that little oyster, put a nucleus in it, close it back up, put it in the water, and a pearl is created. And that changed the world. And all of a sudden, there's bajillions of pearls, to the point where I think Mickey Moto, you guys may have heard of him, whoever's watching, he started making these nice round pearls in 1916 when he got the patent. And by 1933, I think, if I'm remembering right, I might have to look this up, he had produced something like, I think it was 30 million a year, something like that. So pearls in the 1900s became like a big deal. But then, and you got Coco Chanel, right, designing pearl
Hmm.
jewelry. Everybody knows her stuff. Most of that was fake pearls, but still it brought pearls to the market. You had Audrey Hepburn, Marilyn Monroe, all these actors and actresses wearing pearls. So skip to today, you're asking if they're kind of increasing or new. I think that what's happening today is that, this is going to sound interesting, but men in particular are grabbing pearls, and there's a lot of inexpensive freshwater pearls like the ones I bought for my wedding out on the market. So they're more accessible to everybody. So yeah, the pearl industry is growing. It just depends on what kind of type, but you ebb and flow in terms of trends and things like that. Right now, I see a big trend being guys in pearls, and it's pretty exciting.
So, I mean, I see a piece that you're wearing. What typical pearls do you feel styling wise? Like, is it oxidized and silver with a pearl, or is it gold with a pearl? Like, what are you feeling the trend is leading to for males?
It's the interesting thing still about pearls, similar to when I was shopping for my wedding, is that people know pearl, right? But you don't know that the average consumer doesn't know what different types there are and what's the difference between a $50 strand and a $5,000 strand.
Mm.
What I'm seeing happen with a lot of the men, and I actually thought this would be different. I thought men would start to wear black pearls like this, and a lot do. But I'm going to turn around. You'll see the back of my head for a second. A lot of guys are wearing just good old white pearls like that, inexpensive freshwater pearls that are grown in lakes and streams, mostly in China. And you can pick up a strand with a silver clasp for, 50, 80, $100. But
Mm.
even a lot of the celebrities are wearing just very simple strands like this. There's a guy named Jock Peterson, Atlanta Braves. He's now with San Francisco, but he, in the World Series last year, wore a strand just like this during the game, and he's running around the bases after hitting a home run, and they're flapping behind him and whatnot. And everybody in town in Atlanta went out the next day to all the stores and said, "Hey, I want to get those pearls. What are they?" But the stores had no idea exactly
Wow.
what they were, but they were just a very simple set of freshwater pearls. So this tends to be kind of the trend, I think, for guys, is like small white freshwater pearls.
It kind of reminds me of the 90s. Do you remember those puka beads?
Hookah beads.
Those pukas, like I saw the men wearing it a lot. It was
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. They're like Hawaiian and they look like,
yes,
yeah, yeah. They're, I have a pair of my, or a whole thing myself that whenever I go to Hawaii, I throw my suitcase.
yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's funny because, like what you said, I would expect like a black pearl, something simple, kind of rocker-esque. And then
Mhm.
it's interesting though that men are actually going kind of like that full string, like a puka beads, like going full string of pearls now, which is, I definitely would think like not a higher class item, but just definitely an elevated item to any wardrobe.
Well, I think a lot of it too is back in the day, right? It was the aristocracy that created fashion for jewelry, and especially for pearl fashion. And people saw the queens and kings and princesses and whatnot, and like lords, whatever, wear, all the pearls. Today, without the aristocracy, celebrities are the new aristocracy. And
Mm,
so celebrities drive, like they always have, a lot of the fashion, whether it be good or bad. I've seen celebrities wear some horrible looking things. I'm like, oh my God, here we go, right? But with pearls, you're getting guys like Harry Styles. You can count on him to wear pearls every time. Music videos, performances. And if you Google Harry Styles, just look, he's wearing pearls and he'll do all sorts of pearls, but a lot of them are that like simple white strand. And you get people like, oh gosh, Mario Lopez was wearing some a few weeks ago.
yeah.
There is a guy that plays basketball in Miami. I'm not a big sports fan. Is it the
Jimmy
Heat?
Butler?
I don't remember. They're showing up everywhere. Got
Yeah.
who's that rapper? Rocky.
Oh,
Oh,
I know
I'm
who you're
spacing
talking
on it
about.
right now. But anyways, a lot of these celebrities are starting to wear pearls, and that tends to drive it quite a bit. And I think what they wear, or what people run out and try to recreate the look, just like you would for like female celebrities.
Right. Well, I love that it's so starting to be catchy now for males. Like it should
Yeah, I do
catch on
too.
to them because it's very important that it's a fashion trend for both because why not explore that? It's both feminine and masculine. I think it's cool.
Yep, they've never really been owned by either sex in the history. And before 1900, when you started seeing these ladies wear them that made the white pearls popular in 1900, think of Barbara Bush, for example, too. Back before that, you'd see kings wear them. Julius Caesar was famous for loving pearls, and he had a party trick where he could hold a pearl in his hand. And he'd done this so often that he could say, okay, that's going to be 6 grams. And his generals would wear pearls. As a matter of fact, he had a general called General Pompey, and General Pompey was the one guy that was responsible for turning Rome from a colony into an empire by conquering multiple continents. And when he conquered what at the time was called Africa, he came back to Rome and they had this big procession for him on his birthday. It lasted 3 days. And he created the likeness of himself completely made out of pearls and paraded that through town just to show off how cool and important he was and what an unbelievable amount of display of like extreme gross luxury that was. So I mean, this goes way back, and there's a lot of men through history that have worn pearls. It wasn't necessarily just the ladies.
Yeah. I should note to the audience, like they need to check out your YouTube channel because you have amazing, amazing videos about the history of pearls. Specifically, you know, the the king. The king just got inaugurated into his office, if you will, his kingdom. And the British monarchy has been doing this for centuries. And you talk about like that giant pearl that he has sitting on top of his crown.
Yeah,
Was,
those go
yeah.
back to the mid 1500s. The pearls in this crown. Yeah, I don't even think he knows that. I mean, it'd be interesting to know. You
Yeah, it
know.
would be
Yeah,
interesting to know. You should send him some correspondence and see, like, do you know the history on your own crown?
yeah, right. I'll
But
see if I get an answer.
it's pretty fascinating. And so, yeah, it's been here for centuries. And what do you think is the coolest pearl, though, that you have specifically found?
I learned about a pearl called a mellow pearl, and these are grown in a shell that looks like kind of like a conch. You've seen those, right? The big
Yeah.
long ones, and they're kind of peachish, really deep in the waters near Vietnam. And these things are so rare and so important that at a certain point in time, one of the emperors of Vietnam even went around and confiscated these from all the citizens because he felt that there was a power in them to protect him. And in Asian culture, ancient Asian culture, emperors, if you look at emperors' clothings and temples and whatnot, you're always going to see the dragons, right? But look a little closer. The dragons are always chasing or protecting a pearl, and pearls bring prosperity,
Mm.
luck, wisdom, and protection. Anyways, this mellow mellow pearl, I learned about these a number of years ago and fell in love. And they're not nacreous, so it's not like this kind of pearl or the white ones that I was showing you. They don't have the shiny nacre on them. They're non-nacreous pearls, but they're ultra rare and they have this like fire in them when you look at them in the light, kind of like the sun, burning flames. It's really interesting.
Cool.
So yeah, I think that my favorite pearl that I've ever purchased was I was at a trade show and I found this guy from Switzerland that had some mellows, and even having them is rare, right? But he had like four or five. And I was looking at this one, and it's right here. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Ooh,
It's ancient. If you turn it around, it's got a little bit of flame structure to it, is what that's called.
that's so cool.
Well, I found this, and this guy had it, and I said, "Wow, I'd love to own one of those. How much is it?" Right? But it was, I'm thinking, $16,000, something like that.
Wow.
And I'm like, great. I wasn't planning on spending 16,000 bucks, but I really wanted it. So I said, this was like on a Tuesday, and I said, honestly, I don't have the money in my bank account to send it to you, but I'll tell you what, if I could figure this out by say 5 o'clock Friday and I could wire you the money, would you hold it for me? And he said, yes.
Wow.
So I'm walking back there at 5 o'clock Friday, and there's a guy standing in the booth with all this seller's mellows in his hand. And the guy was a really famous jewelry designer named Hemmerly. And if you're into the high end jewelry in Europe, you know Hemmerly, right? And so Mr. Hemmerly himself is standing there with my mellow pearl and a few of the other ones in it. And I'm like, oh, great. There's no way I'm going to compete against Hemmerly. This guy's going to sell it to him, right? So
Right.
everybody wants Hemmerly to buy their stuff. So the vendor looks at me and then he looks at Hemmerly as I'm walking up and he goes, I'm sorry, Mr. Hemmerly, that pearl is reserved for this gentleman. Isn't that awesome?
That's
So Hemmerly
amazing.
picks it up and he looks at it and he goes, young man, I'm 50, right? Young man, do you know what you have here? And I'm like, oh, I absolutely know what I have there. Thank you very much. But anyways, that's that pearl. That's probably my favorite.